Welcome to Tech Talent Today, where IT leaders share their tough challenges, creative solutions, and latest insights. You'll discover fresh ideas and inspiration here with your host, IT staffing veteran and president of Claremont Technologies, Jody Kulik-Mayer. And now, here's Jody.
Welcome to Tech Talent Today. I'm your host, Jody Kulik-Mayer. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Curt Smith. Curt is a senior technology executive with over 25 years experience. He is a results-oriented leader with a strong record of global accomplishment. He builds confident entrepreneurial technology teams focused on delivering technology solutions for business results. Curt is a creative thinker who inspires technologists to challenge industry norms to develop unique and strategic solutions. Curt was the Chief Technology Officer at E-Trade, SVP Global Technology Operations at InterContinental Hotel Group, and SVP Global Chief Technology Officer at Manulife. Curt is currently running his own partnership as a trusted and strategic advisor to firms specializing in the areas of infrastructure, internet, and cloud. Curt recently hiked the Appalachian Trail while raising money for Trekking with Trevor, named for his son, which benefits children with disabilities and their families. Welcome, Curt. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jody. Great to see you again.
Yeah, you were one of my first clients in the IT staffing business. I will only admit to 20 plus years, so that's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, I was thinking back to that, and it's like, wow, the internet didn't exist. But
I know. Should we even say that, right? I had a beeper.
Yeah, right?
Not a cell phone.
Crazy.
Right.
Crazy.
Here we are dating ourselves right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So I remember I saw you on LinkedIn, and you're hiking on the Appalachian Trail for Trekking for Trevor, and you have a full beard. And I'm like remembering you from Lehman Brothers, like totally corporate, totally buttoned up. And I thought I must get you on Tech Talent Today to talk about this. So
yeah, the beard got a little unruly after 5.5, 6 months.
Right. Yeah, that wasn't a Lehman Brothers beard. So
as you can see, my wife didn't let it stay very long after I got home.
That's right. If you're willing, we could put a picture up with the show notes.
I will definitely send you one because
Okay.
it's night and day when you see me today and see what I was when I finished.
Yeah, I couldn't wait to hear this story. So tell me, what is Trekking for Trevor?
So I mean, the simplest thing was I had decided to, over more than a decade. I live in North Georgia. We have visited the North Georgia mountains and the North Carolina mountains for years. And back in my E-Trade days, there were a group of us that wanted to get back into backpacking and hiking. And so we started with just like weekend trips. And we did this thing called Packs and Poker. We would go hike for 3 days, we'd camp for 2 nights, and then on the last night, we'd go to our base camp and we would play poker all night. And then we'd go home. And a lot of that was on the Appalachian Trail in parts of North Carolina, parts of Georgia. And I caught the bug. I started reading all the books about the Appalachian Trail, started thinking about, and I probably went on and off of, if I had 6 months, is that what I would do? Because at the time I had kids and wife and job. And, if you had 6 months, you probably wouldn't dedicate it to one thing. I'd probably travel with my wife, go to Europe, do all sorts of different trails or adventures or whatever. But then I guess it was 2000. Yeah, midway through COVID, I got an opportunity to kind of retire from my corporate life. And I decided to do that. I'd been kind of planning on it somewhere in that range. And so all of a sudden, 6 months didn't seem that big because you have another 6 months coming after that. I had what I called the dominoes, which was, I have 2 boys. They were both settled. I had to get them settled. I couldn't leave home and leave my wife to, mind the house. it's bad enough that we're apart for 6 months, but I wasn't going to leave her with more responsibilities. So anyway, the window opened up for a 6-month window where, my oldest son was like, well, you've been talking about this forever. You need to go. And my wife was like, yeah. But anyway, so anyway, so got the window to do the through hike, got the green light. And as I was kind of preparing, one of the things that you do around one of the books I read was a psychological, how do you prepare yourself? Because the mental game is the hardest part. And, one of them was have a purpose. Well, my younger son has special needs. And, I've been involved for years with this organization called Focus, which stands for Families of Children Under Stress. They help families in the Atlanta area, Georgia proper, maybe a little beyond that, but about 4,500 families, and they provide everything from counseling services to respite times on weekends, to summer camps, both for younger and older kids. They have an adaptive swim team, all these different things that help families kind of get through. Plus, they hold like conferences to help you navigate how to find a neurologist, how to find an attorney, what do you do, just the how-tos. So anyway, for years, I've run a golf tournament with them. I've helped them raise funds through my career. Got involved with them early when I was with E-Trade from a financial perspective, and we backed and supported them and did a number of things. So we were running the golf tournament the year before the hike, and they all panic and goes, we're going to do the golf tournament, right? And it's like, yeah, we got the golf tournament. But as I was thinking about it, and thinking of the psychological, one of the things, I'm kind of long-winded as you'll find, one of the things was to have a purpose. And what really resonated with me was, it's not my style, but to tell everybody you're going to do it. Right. And even on top of that, adding a purpose and telling them that you're going to do it creates this community of not only support, but it puts the pressure on me of like, well, I'm not going to quit, because I'd hate to admit to them that what am I going to come back and go, well, it was hard, so I'm going to give up. No, you have this community then of what it was. So I came up with Trekking for Trevor. Trevor is my son's name. And it was a way to engage friends, family, others, to do a fundraiser for Focus while I was hiking the trail. And I created, a group page on Facebook. I had an Instagram. I wasn't very good at it. I thought about YouTube, but to be honest, I didn't want it to be too much of a distraction from the hike, but I did want to, kind of provide updates as I went. So Trekking for Trevor was a fundraiser and a way to add purpose to my Appalachian Trail through hike. And yeah.
Wow.
So that's what it was.
So how long is the trail, and were you away for 6 months? Like, what's the scope?
So the trail is officially, the official length last year, which it changes a little bit every year because they have to redo things. The official length last year was 2,194.3 miles.
Right.
That does not include, there's an approach trail. It's kind of funny. The trail begins and ends in places that you can't drive to. So you end up, there's a 9-mile hike from a state park up to the beginning of the trail. So you end up being a little over 2,200 miles.
Wow. That sort of makes you think of like base camp with Everest, right? It's like
kind of.
Even just getting to it is not easy. I mean, 9 miles is a lot.
Yeah, that's to get to the beginning. Yeah, so your first day, that's essentially what you do. Some people don't even go that far. They take a day and a half to get there. Right. Depends what kind of shape you're on, and part of that is a hike up a waterfall, which is like 650 steps or something. Stairs, actual stairs. But yeah, I was gone. I left February 28th, and I got back on I finished on August 12th. So it was almost exactly 5.5 months. Now, in that period, I visited with my wife a couple of times. I went and saw my younger son. I got off trail stopped in Virginia, got a rental car, drove to Kentucky, visited for a day, drove back to the trail, and got back on the trail. So there was like a 3-day, you take little breaks here and there. But that was the only time I think I was officially off trail. But the rest of the time, it was 5.5 months.
Wow, what an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you.
you must have felt like, I mean, how I don't want to even characterize it. How'd you feel at the end? Did you, like, relieved or elated? Like, how'd you feel?
It's an emotional roller coaster, right? I think near the end you're ready to be done. Um, you're physically and mentally kind of exhausted, and you've been away for a long time, so you're excited to get back to your family and friends and kind of normal life. Um, but oddly, they have what they call hiker depression. It's not really depression, so I don't want to, belittle that term or make too much of it. But when you get home, yeah, then there's kind of this weird, now I'm back in normal life. There's things you can read about. I won't go into too deeply, but I equate it to, trail life is simple. And there's an acronym we use, but it's simple, meaning you really just need to eat, sleep, get water, and hike. And then every 5 or 7 days, you're going to shop for food, take a shower, do laundry. I mean, other than that, and in my case, seeking out a cold beer here and there, uh, and the community of it all, it's very simple. And even better, I think this is the part that's probably the most important part, is there's a community of people you're doing it with. You may not be with them every day, you may not be with the same people every day, but everybody's on the same mission. And so even on the worst day, you find that you're sitting amongst a group laughing about how bad it was, right? So no matter what the struggle is, you have a group of people that you're doing it with, and you miss that, right? So you get through and you're done, and all of a sudden they're all gone, right? And I read something once, which is an ironic thing, which is we all want to have choices in our life, but actually the more choices we add, the more hard it is to have purpose or, simplicity. So when I'll find now it's like, well, I have all these choices, and one of the choices is to do nothing.
Right.
And so, there was a period where it's like, well, I don't have to get out of bed. Why would I get out of bed? And I'm an early riser, but all of a sudden it's like 8:30. It's like, all right, I'll get up.
Right.
And it's like, what am I going to do today? It's like, I don't know. And I'm one of the lucky ones where I am semi-retired. I don't have a corporate job. So even that was kind of like an added kind of thing to my readjustment, because when I did go into that phase of my career, my purpose became doing the hike. So when I finished the hike, all of a sudden it's like, well, not only did I finish the hike, but now I'm also kind of retired and nobody's banging on my door to meet with me. So it's kind of up to me. And so that was an added kind of, on one hand, I felt really lucky that I had people on the trail where I said, oh, what are you doing next week? And they're like, well, I got to go back to work. I'm like, I couldn't even imagine, having to dial up. I didn't look at email for 6 months. Like I didn't even look.
Wow. I can't even imagine that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I was one of a lot of people, either had to or did stay very connected through their phones and things like that. I was pretty minimal. Like I didn't look at the stock market. I didn't look at much of the news. You would see news when you were in town, but I didn't really attempt to stay all that connected. And other than trekking for Trevor, which I had my own group, so it wasn't my personal friends, my Facebook account. It was a group account, so I could just post there, and the only thing I was posting about was a hike. And so I didn't follow, anything else going on. But anyway, yeah, it was really interesting.
Well, you mentioned to me that you met a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, and you end up giving career advice to them. So I guess, what were some of the things they talked to you about and were struggling with?
Yeah, I tried really hard not to, right? Because Debbie Downer to the 30 somethings that are out there, finding themselves. So I tried to keep it pretty lighthearted, right? I mean, just not like, oh, you got to go do this, you got to do that. But one woman in particular, she was a recent computer science grad, so out there, she was very bright. Loved, we were hiking along together. We just happened to fall in sync with one another, and we got talking about global warming and things that she was really passionate about. And then, she ended it with, well, I don't want to sit in an office all day behind a computer screen. And I'm like, you're a computer scientist.
Maybe you should have thought about that.
Well, and this is kind of relevant to my career because you dig through it, and my son's a computer science major too, so I've been kind of coaching him a little. I kind of coach him kind of through other people,
Right.
just because that's what parents do.
Right.
But my advice to her was, forget the computer science part. You know, find a way for computer science to be that's your skill. But what's your passion? And if your passion is global warming or finding ways to solve global warming, try to find a way to take your skills and match it into that passion, because that's what drives success, right? What gets you up in the morning? It's not to write code, or in my case, infrastructure design, build a database or whatever. It's what are you doing it for, and what are you enabling? And it took me a couple phases through my career, where I started with AT&T, and my simplistic decision point in that was, do you want to be on the buy side of technology or the sell side? And the sell side is you're creating a product. You're in a company that creates things they sell to enable technology. Some people love that product, create a product, be involved, whether you work for a high-tech firm that does that, or do you want to be the person in a company that's taking those products and solving a business problem? And so my first decision was, I decided that I really learned early that I didn't like being on the sell side.
Right.
I didn't want to create products. Because you're sitting there, you got to convince people to use your product to solve their problems. And you think you kind of know their problems, that's your job, but then you have to kind of know a lot of different spaces or go vertical. So I went very early in my career, I shifted from, sell side to buy side. That my first opportunity in that came from a customer that was an AT&T computer system buyer who wanted somebody to come help them develop inside their company AT&T computer systems, which happened to be an advertising agency. Which, for me, it was like I got interested. I read books about advertising. I got, all into the space, read about the company. But then you find that, especially this was late 80s, early 90s, they weren't doing a lot of tech, right? So you found very quickly now I'm in a company where tech is kind of a nice to have, not a need to have. And you're kind of at the beck and call of what happens with the budget. And, the CEO goes, we just lost a customer to tech budget. Literally, when I was there, went to like zero.
Wow.
It's like, just maintain it. You're kind of a cost that we don't really want to deal with. And so I wasn't there very long because I was 25, 26. And I was like, well, this isn't going to go well. So I actually consulted for a little bit, started navigating, and that's when I landed on Wall Street. Landed at Lehman Brothers, and it's like all of a sudden, it's like, wow, okay, tech is actually a weapon. Like speed is essential, mission critical is essential. The tension was high, and I'm a little bit borderline adrenaline junkie, and my niche was my ability to stay calm under fire. Right. And so I kind of thrived in that space, and it moved me pretty rapidly, not because of my technical skills necessarily, but because of my communications and my calm under fire when crises would emerge. And I found I really liked it, so then, as I stayed, 10 years on Wall Street, both with Lehman Brothers and Deutsche Bank. And then, this was kind of serendipitous. My first son was born. I didn't grow up in New York, so I grew up in the Midwest. So it's like, okay, the Wall Street lifestyle may or may not fit into my family vision. So my wife and I started thinking about where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And lo and behold, the opportunity came to come to E-Trade, where it's like finance meets the internet. I thought I had dealt with all the pressure on the planet, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow, this is way worse. We're on 24 hours a day. We're public. People can see what's going on. So when things go wrong, they go wrong in a very visible way. From a security perspective, we're a target. We have people's money, but I loved it. It was absolutely loved it. So I spent, 13 years with E-Trade. Uh, for me, it was like, it was the ultimate, and there's other examples of it, but where, you know, tech is mission critical. It has to be there. It is a competitive weapon, so you're in the thick of it. Um, but also in E-Trade's case, it was right for me from a size perspective because you had a lot of good business relationships. You weren't just a cog in a big wheel. Um, but that worked out. Anyway, so the advice was, find, if you're going to make a move, make those kinds of moves. It's like try to narrow it down. You don't have to get it perfect. You're going to get it right. You're going to get it wrong. I played a lot of different roles, through all of those. But as you make a move, I would say, for that woman in particular, you know, my advice would be don't say what you don't want to do. Think about what it is you want to do or what you're passionate about. You have a set of skills. How do you put that in? And worst case, it gets you in the door of something you're passionate about. You may find down the road that you drop the whole tech part, but at least you're in an industry where you've got exposure, you've gained credibility, people see your skills, and all of a sudden, you're getting opportunities because of who and what you are, not just I'm a software engineer.
Right, right. So was it your like goal or intention to become like a C-level person, which you did achieve, or it just happened that way?
Yeah, it kind of just happened. I think I was pretty fortunate. Um, yeah, I would say uh, most of the jobs I took were above me, where I had to scramble. And, I think that's another bit of advice is don't be afraid to take risks. I mean, a lot of the roles that I was given the opportunity to take, people gave to me because they saw something, but I sat there and go, but I don't, this isn't my specialty. I don't know this. And, but no, I don't remember ever aspiring to a C level. And in fact, it was a friend of mine when I was at E-Trade. I started out, I ran operations at E-Trade, which was my first role, which was kind of taking that calm under fire. Um, Pretty quickly, I picked up engineering, which was more the design element, and then slowly, then architecture got layered on top of it, and then quality assurance, and then data warehousing. Um, and eventually it grew to where one of the guys actually said to my boss, he goes, why don't you just make him CTO? Yeah.
Everything
I,
reported into you anyway.
I didn't even, yeah, I didn't even ask for it and hadn't even thought about it. But the reality was he was right. And that, my other advice usually to people is don't aspire to a title. But I would also say getting the title opens doors. So, yes, I would say from a personal, how does it make you feel perspective, a title doesn't make you feel different. But, once you hit those levels, and if you're doing the job anyway and you like it, then, getting that title is great. I mean, I think you have to be very true to yourself. Through all of that, I didn't aspire to be a CTO, but I genuinely enjoyed everything I was doing. Right. And I liked why I did it. I liked who I was doing it for. And then lo and behold, the next thing you know, there you are. And I think the opposite can be true, that if you jump into something you're not passionate about, or, well, actually, my last move, and I won't name the company, but you can go look it up in LinkedIn. Um, I I moved back into what I considered to be financial services, but it wasn't the same. And I went for a very good reason, uh, with someone that really wanted me to do the job. But things changed, and when they changed, um, I found that it was very dissatisfying, and I had a very big title and I had a very big role, but I'll be honest, it wasn't very satisfying. And so I think if I were giving advice, no matter what level, whether it's director, VP, AVP, whatever, make sure that it's someplace where you feel you're going to get that feedback. Because the notion of getting the title will feel good at first, but it wears off very quickly. Same thing is true with money. Um, if you jump to a higher salary, make sure it's something you want to do, because you get used to that salary level pretty quickly, and then you forget,
Right.
and then you're on to the next thing. So it's easy to get caught up into it. When you hear your colleagues getting 30% increases or even more in this last job market, very easy. But what I would say is try to learn your path and know what makes you tick and what doesn't make you tick. And if it's just the money and you can't tick any other boxes at what gives you good feedback or what's satisfying or what's enjoyable, then I would say might be best to skip it. Unless there's always it's complicated.
Right.
Unless you're in a bad situation, and sometimes buying time, or maybe you're in a time with your family where you need to focus on your balance more than you need to focus on your career, and having that less intense environment is something that suits your time period. Isn't a bad thing either. Just, I mean, don't mail it in, but just realize that you're balancing, maybe your career. And that happened to me a little bit. I was fortunate. I had been with E-Trade when Trevor was born and my special needs son, and I needed to back off a little bit. But they were, extremely supportive. Sorry.
Wow, that's really lucky because you said it was such like an intense place,
Yeah.
where the adrenaline, and that they still were able to like accommodate you and like value you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, it's
Yeah. I mean,
surprising.
fortunately, it is. And, fortunately, I'd been there 5 years, so things had, one of the benefits at a C level or senior level, after 5 years, hopefully things have stabilized and you've built a good team, and it's a true test of a leader that you should be able to step away a little bit, because, that's our job. Our job, I once said to my boss, I'm like, look, it shouldn't be that when I'm not there, you're not comfortable.
Right.
Right. And it was actually a really good conversation on my first backpacking trip, to be honest. We'll go full spin. Um, I was on one of my first backpacking trips, on one of those packs and poker trips. And it was when I think it was the Lehman Brothers in 2008.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
were
2008.
backpacking when that happened.
I was in the woods, yeah, on the Friday that went under, and the markets went crazy, and the systems were under significant stress. The team did everything they needed to do, but I got to a point where I had cell signal, and my boss at the time said, "You're never doing this again." And and we got back. When I got back, I didn't think about it. But when I got back, we kind of debriefed, and I said, "Well, did anything go wrong?" And it was no. What it came down to is he was used to talking to me, and I was the voice of calm, and he was very much the opposite, right? So under fire, he was not the person you wanted on the conference call making the shots. Fortunately, I had people that did, but he missed his safety blanket,
Right.
and I was that blanket, right? It's like, okay, we're good, we're doing this, we're doing that, and everybody has their niche, right? Um, so yeah, it was it was interesting, and I think because of that, though, it really made me feel good about where we were going, what we had done, and where we were going. And as a person, you have to be very comfortable with that. It's like, because basically what you're saying is you don't need me.
Right.
Now I caveat that with, I always just say, well, nothing will happen for the first 6 months.
Right. When new
After that,
problems come up and
after
you're
after that you
feeling,
are
yeah.
after that you're on your own. But yeah, so you have to be confident in your own skill set to build a good, solid team around you, and have those professionals around you, and who plays what role when you're not there. But it is your job to make sure that that's true. I mean, you can't be in a job where I we get into work-life balance, but my wife would tell you most of the time, like vacations, I did not get on email, I did not get on the phone. You have to manage your own work-life balance, but I would say it's more of your job personally to draw that line. Others will get used to it. And I actually would get upset with my team. I'm like, no, when you go, you go. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to, I don't want to see an email. And some people are extremely uncomfortable with that. And I was like, to me, that's a sign of weakness.
Mhm.
Like if you're not that confident that you can let go, and I need you to shut down. I need you to go away. I need you to have a good time. I need you to rest. I need you to, then you can come back and jump back in and I'll dump all this stuff on
Right. So like the vacation never happened.
you. Well, that's a given, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the day before you leave on vacation and the day you get back are,
Very
paying up for
stressful.
time off.
All right, that there's always a price, and that's the
That's
price.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
but that's good. No, it's great when like your boss is encouraging you to unplug. It's
Yeah.
I feel like it's not that common, and I always had a hard time unplugging. Also, maybe it's the
Yeah.
adrenaline of the whole thing, right? You have
Well,
all these
you have
things
your own, well,
happening.
you have your own. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the curse of having your own business, right?
Yes.
I think everybody always thinks the grass is greener and they all want to work for themselves, but I think that's a whole different psychological, that's a different stress level that you have. So yeah, no, I get it.
It is true. I had to like learn how to sleep soundly, having my own business, being right responsible for everybody's payroll. But
Yeah.
so this month I'm in business 10 years. So
Wow,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you, thank
That's
you.
incredible.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I've learned a lot. So even though like I'm in the same IT staffing business, it is different when it's your own company and everybody's
Yeah.
relying on you. But you still right. You need a team that can handle things when you're not there. So everything you said is true. It doesn't
Yeah.
change. But I guess right when it's not corporate budget money,
Yeah.
it feels different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So, like, what are your thoughts on how things are? Like, I guess I don't know if I call it a culture. It's changing now that a lot of people are working remote and hybrid. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a complex. I hesitate to answer because I feel like I'm a dinosaur. I think it goes back to uh, are you willing to accept the the effects, right? So I get it. I get it's nice to find a hybrid. I think of flexibility because life, has demands, and it's nice when you can be responsive. And once your life becomes more complex, especially if you have a spouse, significant other, you have children, managing all of that. I'm all for, especially if both significant others work. How do you manage that with children? And I think it's important to have a presence and the ability to participate in that. And so I think the hybrid situation is great. Um, I I struggle a little bit with those that are early in their careers not wanting to be exposed to the office life because I think there are so many intangibles that are critical to development. Um, just getting exposure to what other people do, especially if your aspiration is to be like a C-level person or even senior management. I had to play a lot of different roles. Many of those roles I had never done firsthand, but I had to understand them. And early in my career, I actually made shifts between, you know, I was in systems, I was in networks, I was in security. You kind of get that exposure that creates that foundation of well-roundedness so that you can, at a C level or a senior management level, your job is to help teams communicate and come together to achieve complex things. If you haven't been in the environment, you don't. I personally feel like it benefited me to be around that. It's much easier. Um, you get it through almost through osmosis by being around it, as opposed to having to proactively go seek someone out to do, find out what it is they do. I also think, similarly, I talked about, finding something that you're working for that you're passionate about. So if you're in financial services or if you're in advertising or if you're in, green energy or you're in, pharmaceuticals. If you're at home and you're a technologist, you're not going to get the exposure to those business people that you need to understand how you grow to add value to that business. Because at the end of the day, that's what management is. You're not just the best at, being a network engineer. You're the one that understands what the network engineers are supposed to be doing to help that particular business, or how you fit into the bigger wheel in the cog. And I, as one of the strengths I think I had as a leader was, how do you help junior people understand their connection to the business? The hardest thing in the world was always to get people off of what the right technical answer was versus what the right combined technical business answer to something was. And I just think if you're working from home all the time, it's hard to get that. And when you're younger, you don't realize that your best window of opportunity to really suck that up is before you have all the responsibilities of life. So when you're younger, you should be in there, and work-life balance, la la la. It's like I didn't work more because I wanted to work more. I wasn't necessarily doing what work was. I was participating in things that were helping me educate myself or grow myself, that I would spend additional time. Yeah, I was in the office, but I wasn't necessarily doing my job. I was preparing myself to be more than my job, and so I think career development. So, hopefully, having managed long enough to see some of this, I think the hard part is when you go to flex or hybrid, it's hard to combine who's in the office when, so that you kind of get the critical, I'm getting feedback from my son now. It's like, who's in the office when you're there? And he can kind of tell you, it's like, oh, this one's barely there ever, and then he works in a startup kind of scenario, so he knows everybody, but, he kind of knows the whole gambit. I think at some point you got to figure out where's that smallest nucleus, so at least there's as much commonality as possible. But it's tricky. I've been there. So I think hopefully you'll see it come around a little bit. I do think it's going to get interesting this year, and it's certainly, we're talking, and I don't know when this will air, but it's, we're hearing about layoffs. I don't want to be a doomsdayist especially not for tech folks, because I think tech is so critical to almost every industry that the jobs will be okay. But I think you will see a little bit of a flip of how much demand or how much expectation you should have in pursuing your next opportunity, and demanding to work full from home or things like that may limit your opportunities. Because I know, being at the C-level, it's hard to imagine many companies, if they don't have the opportunity, are going to push for at least some level of return to office, I think. I'm sure it varies by job. Some jobs certainly can, and they probably won't, but I think there's others that they will.
Right. Yeah, so, right. Some of my clients, right, are pushing for return to office, or they have certain days that they require everybody to be in, so there's that overlap that you talk
Yeah,
about.
and as certainly being in I did the New York commute for a good chunk of my career. Yeah, I get it. It's not fun.
Right.
And nice if you can avoid, nothing better than not waking up Monday morning and not having to think about getting on the train.
It's true. And
Or in my case, being in Atlanta, not sitting in traffic, which is debatable. I'd rather be on the train, to be honest.
right, you could at least read a book.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's also, I think it's interesting because we have been like in the business so long. We've seen the different like demand cycles for people, right? Sometimes it's a candidate market. Sometimes it's a client market. But it's been a candidate market for a while now.
Yeah.
But it always,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to turn, but they say there's a shortage of tech people. So, I don't have a crystal ball.
Well, that's what I mean. Well, that's what I mean. I think the good news for folks in tech is, I think there's going to continue to be demand. I think the bad news for tech people, and you're seeing it, those that may have bought into some of the inflatedness because of where we got to probably early last year, or even mid last year, where, the war on talent was kicking in and people were paying significant salaries. They're paying, doling out titles like they didn't exist. Having been on the other side and been on the pressure of how do you meet the demands, of the upcoming economic turn, those are usually the ones that take the hits earliest, and they're the hardest ones to replace. So I think the demand will be fine. And we saw it, not to age ourselves, but we were there. Um, you know, I went to E-Trade in 2000, which for those that are listening that didn't live through it, the internet bubble burst. And I use that example a lot with people I talk to. Is like, it felt very much like this last job market. Not quite the same, but very similar. And the ones that got caught in it were kind of not the bottom, not the top, but in the soft middle, who may have accelerated their careers a little bit too fast and then the hardest thing once you have like a VP title or salaries is how to not take it, right? And even hiring folks will look at it and go, well, why would you want to, downstep it? And the answer can't be, well, because I can't get a job otherwise.
Right.
But that is the danger, right? I don't know what the right answer was, and I can't blame people for wanting to take advantage of the market as it was. But I hope that's the reality from my perspective is that's the part that if you're asked to, which is never fun, if you're ever asked to make cuts, you'll get all sorts of things. People probably don't want to hear this, but this is why people hate management. But they'll start looking at what was it, tiers and spans, and you look at titles and how many VPs do we have? Oh, we have way too many VPs. So it becomes it's a challenge as a management level to fight against that if it doesn't make sense. So I mean that's your job, and I did do a lot of those where it's like, okay, let me build a spreadsheet and show you why what you're asking makes no sense. So there is a lot of back and forth, and you have to have that comfort. Others will just do what they say, whether it makes sense or not. But back when we first met, when I was at Lehman Brothers, that was, I guess, 92 to mid 90s.
Yes.
I remember Lehman went through 3 rounds of layoffs over the course of, a year and a half, 2 years. And the first cut, you're kind of like, okay, that made sense, a little fluffy, lower performers, no one got too upset. Second round, felt a little, where the third round was like, whoa, we can't function without these people. What are you doing?
Right.
So hopefully I really struggle to see it getting that bad, but don't look at me for a financial prognostication of what's going to happen. I get upset because I actually think the economy isn't that bad, but there's a self-fulfilling prophecy of how people respond to the news. So we'll see. You just never know. But
Right.
hopefully not.
Right. We talked about how interesting things are. So there's a
Yeah,
lot to talk about here.
that's right.
So this was great. Do you have any parting thoughts?
Oh, gosh. Let me think about it. I've been very fortunate in my career. So uh, I think, my advice would be don't buy in too hard. And I don't think people do. It's like you got to be careful what you read. But don't be afraid for those listening, especially if you're younger, to work hard in the early phases. And I know there's a lot of, you have to make your life choice, right? You can buy it on the front end or you're going to pay for it on the back end. And the challenge is there's no guarantees on the back end. I've been very lucky. I'm in my mid 50s, and here I sit with, basically hiking the AT, doing what I want to do, being able to kind of take or leave options as I want to do them. And I would say that most of that came from, one, kind of driving it early and doing a lot of steps. There's some luck in there. you know, you get lucky. Sometimes you make your own luck,
Right.
but some of it, maybe a small amount is skill. But I think the advice would be, be aware that life is full of choices, and as long as you're willing to accept the outcomes. I think the danger for those on the front end trying to do too much balance is, you may end up working later, or I don't know, who knows?
Right.
It's hard. The variables are infinite, right? So I can only share what I experienced and what I've seen. And I just think the cautionary tale from my perspective would be too much work-life balance on the front end, may slow your growth on the back end, or you may miss the window of opportunity when you can actually afford to invest the time to invest in your career. But on the flip side, you may have some great stories to tell. So,
right.
I met a lot of, the biggest age group on the Appalachian Trail was, mid-20s to early 30s. So, and quite a few tech folks, a ton in the healthcare industry, which was very understandable. It's like, look, they needed it. So anyway, but only parting words was thank you very much. It's been a joy. I hope people benefit from whatever I had to say.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun. It's been exciting. It's been a great ride for me, and the Appalachian Trail was fantastic. And we'll see what we do next.
That's right. We'll have, who knows, maybe it'll be Mount Everest, and we'll talk about that.
No. I'm not doing things where what is it they call that part, the ring of death or whatever? I don't know.
Oh, right.
No.
No.
Yeah, I'm not doing things where
Okay.
I like a little bit of excitement, but yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not that big of an adventurous. Maybe another trail somewhere.
Right. Well, thank you so much for making the time. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Jody.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Tech Talent Today, brought to you by Clearmont Technologies IT Staffing and Search. You can find out more at clearmonttech.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share. See you next time.